If you look back over the last 2 years over AI applications, there's been two big product market fit areas for AI agents at the enterprise. It's coding, and then there is customer service.
You're 27, you're building Decagon, you guys had a $1.5 billion valuation. Traditionally, you would be a young founder, but in the AI space, you're like a distinguished elder. We're like dinosaurs over here.
Are there specific areas where you think AI really doesn't work in this application?
I think
Hey everybody, it's Sam Jacobs, the CEO of Pavilion. Welcome to another great episode of Top Line. Today on the show, we've got a very special guest. It's Jesse Zhang, the co-founder and CEO of Decagon. Decagon is an AI startup, and they're focused on the customer support space. They've raised a total of $231 million as a Series C company, and their last valuation made them a unicorn, $1.5 billion valuation. Customers include Chime, Rippling, and dozens of other enterprise customers. And we're excited to have Jesse on the show because we've seen some jitters in the AI market, mainly because of this MIT study that showed that 95% of AI pilots at the enterprise level are leading to zero ROI as one of the companies having success at the enterprise level. Jesse can help us make sense of this. And we're also going to talk, of course, about how he's building Decagon, about the new era of pricing and how agent-focused businesses are deciding how they charge their customers and how they align with their customers. And of course, the thrills and experiences of building a company at a young age. Jesse, welcome to Top Line.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's great to see you all.
We're excited to have you here. Asad, AJ, how are the two of you doing?
Fantastic. Jesse, did Sam nail your bio? Did that just encapsulate you in 30 seconds?
That was a great bio. Very eloquent intro.
That's it. Thank you. Well, let's dive into it. Asad, kick us off.
Okay, easy question first, because I've been thinking about this today. Decagon is a really good name. How'd you guys come up with it? Because I was thinking, okay, you've got Sierra, you've got Agent Force, you've got Decagon. I want Decagon to do my thing. How'd you guys come up with the name?
Oh, thanks for that. Decagon, so it's kind of interesting. I have a pretty mathy background, so with my co-founder, we like the word. Decagon is a 10-sided shape.
Yeah.
And we got the word, we got the domain, and the sort of motivation was we were really interested in the concept of the 10x employee. So in engineering, it's like you kind of talk about the 10x engineer and they're way more productive and so on. And our whole view with these AI agents is that they're able to make your entire workforce, no matter no matter what the role is, 10x more productive. And so, we're starting with sort of the 10x customer service agent, for example, and by making AI effective there, that's really what we're hoping to achieve.
Kind of sounds similar to how Google thought about theirs, but they misspelled theirs. Did you misspell yours?
No, this is the correct spelling.
I'm just kidding. That's a famous story that they accidentally misspelled the word, like a really, really large number that they couldn't think of in Google, which is only has one L in it.
I think GOL or something like that.
Yeah, they misspelled it, but it stuck.
Second easy question before we get into the hard stuff. You're 27, you're building Decagon, you guys had a $1.5 billion valuation. Traditionally, you would be a young founder, but in the AI space, you're like a distinguished elder. We're like dinosaurs over here. What does that feel like?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's both exciting and also overblown, right? Like it doesn't feel like we're out of place because there's so many successful young founders, people that are younger than us. But at the same time, most founders are still older, and there's a reason for that, right? I started a company before this. I think the second time around, you just have a lot better intuition. You just make better decisions overall. And so
you're willing to trust your intuition more too, right? Like at that point.
Yeah. And I would say the first time it's kind of like you don't really know what you don't know. So you're kind of in this situation where maybe you feel really confident in yourself, you have a lot of energy, and then you're just like, go. And it's like, 6 months later, you realize actually we're wasting time this whole time.
I have felt that many a time. Okay. So now let's jump into it. So there have been some jitters in the AI space over the last week or so it's a perfect time to have you here. There are a few reasons for this. Altman said we're in a bit of a bubble. There was reports that Meta was doing some type of restructuring within their AI lab. But really the thing that was the major catalyst was the MIT study. And this study that Fortune dug up, because it was actually published a while ago, but Fortune dug it up. And what it said was that the Gen AI pilots that have been run at enterprise companies, 95% of them are providing zero value. And the 5% that are providing value, interestingly, are providing value in back office related tasks and not in sales and marketing. So You lead one of the few AI companies that are having success at the enterprise level, and you don't focus on back office tasks. And so, to start this off, can you riff a bit on just the study, the reaction, as well as how the findings compare to your experience dealing with the enterprise?
Interesting. Yeah. So we were looking at the study as well. I would say that it's been a bit of time, as you mentioned, since the study. So I think there's been new use cases that have emerged quickly. But I think overall, we generally agree with the study. I mean, the metrics themselves, maybe they're a little sensationalized, or I'm sure they put in more methodology than just our anecdotes. But anecdotally, when we can talk to customers, and this was a big theme of ours when we first started the company, because we didn't really know what we were working on yet, right? So we were kind of talking about all these use cases. I think if you look back over the last 2 years over AI applications, there's been kind of two big product market fit areas for AI agents at the enterprise and horizontally, right? So it's coding, people writing code, coding agents, and then there is customer service. And there's a couple of reasons for this. The biggest one, as you mentioned, is ROI. If you think about it from an enterprise's perspective, right? Enterprises are pretty complex. There's people everywhere. There's a ton of things going on, and they have to kind of prioritize their decision making. So if they're going to invest in AI, they need to be able to point to a very simple, easy to understand ROI metric that ideally directly ties to money, right? So like they basically need to justify like, okay, by investing this, we're either saving a ton of money or we're making a bunch of extra money, and ideally both. So if you think about coding, the reason why that's taken off is that it's pretty easy to deploy, right? You just like give it to your engineers, and then you can kind of see the output of what the engineers are building, and engineers will also just tell you that like, hey, this is like massive for my productivity, right? I can't live without it. And so that's pretty easy to justify because engineers are often the highest paid people at the organization, and so if you're making them more productive, you can kind of do the ROI calculation, and you can see, I can ship more product, and that's going to lead to faster growth and so on. So that's one area. Customer service, I would say, is even more quantitative than that, which is, hey, I have all this conversation volume coming in. I need to service it. And so right now I service it by, hiring a big team or like using this BPO and scaling that a lot. And the calculus that these enterprises are thinking through is like, okay, well, if I can have AI do it, I can really easily measure what fraction of the conversations is AI handling. And, probably how happy are customers in those conversations. And people can measure this with various metrics. Usually it's like an NPS type survey or CSAT rating and so on. And so those are the two big metrics. And let's say you launch an AI agent and you're able to just see a big lift on both of those metrics, then it's a very easy business case, right? It's like, not only are we saving money, and I can like literally calculate how much money we're saving. I can also justify like, hey, the customer experience is better, and that's what's really important for our business. And we know that as the customer experience increases this much, we're going to have higher retention, we're going to have higher conversion, and our revenue goes up, right? That's why these two use cases have been very impactful, like you said, because of the ROI. I mean, back office is another one where I think those are a little bit more verticalized, but yeah, you can also really easily measure the ROI there in the same way that you're measuring the ROI for customer service. But I think these are the two big horizontal spaces. I think the thing that's more underrated is that people don't talk about enough beyond ROI is just how easy is it to get to production. Mm-hmm. And there might be other use cases where the ROI is also pretty easy to quantify, or it's very tangible. But if you just map out the use case a few months out, you'll quickly see that like, oh man, the stuff you're going to have to do to get out in production is going to be super high, because maybe the AI agent has to be perfect and it's handling everything. There's no fallback. And so you literally have to just test it until your accuracy rate is high. And then maybe it never gets there, right? Because these models are non-deterministic. So maybe you need 99.9% accuracy, but you kind of capped at 98, and like that's the best you can do, and there's just no way to get to production. And so that's how a lot of pilots die, is that like, hey, people are really excited, they're sold the dream, and they actually test it, and it's just too difficult to get into production, or the bar is too high to actually get something going. And that's the benefit of back office use cases or coding, is that it's okay to make mistakes because you're kind of overseen by humans, and they're able to kind of correct mistakes.
What do you think some of the key to exactly your point? And I think this distinction is so helpful for everybody listening. So when you see enterprises deploying AI overly optimistically into the wrong departments, the wrong areas, to your point, where there need to be deterministic answers as opposed to probabilistic? Like, what are the areas that enterprises listening should be very cautious about deploying AI if we understand and have confidence that customer support and coding are, two great use cases they can get into production quickly?
What do they need to be cautious about?
What departments do they need to be cautious about? Are there specific areas where you think AI really doesn't work in this application?
Yeah, I would say it's situations where there is no escalation path or no fallback, right? A little bit of a reason why I think sales agents have not gained as much traction yet, even though the sort of use case is obvious, is that if you make them just fully autonomous themselves, you're kind of like putting prospective customers in the hands of that. There's not really that much room for error. If you lose them, that's like a big hit. And yeah, it just also there's a property that kind of becomes spammy over time.
There are tools that are like Abundance. I know is a YC company that is like they're built to get the human back in the loop when some of these autonomous things. So you're starting to see pieces of that when things get stuck.
It's hard, no, right? Because most companies don't have unlimited demand. So if you have constrained demand, do you want to take that risk that like this thing might 9 out of 10 times say something okay, 1 out of 10 times say something bad? Like, I don't know if companies are willing to take that risk.
No, because you see Waymo. Remember the viral video of the guy just going around in the parking lot and like he was like yelling at the top of his lungs, like this Waymo keeps going around. It was like 10 minutes. He's like, I have to go to the airport, but I'm just going around in a circle on a Waymo.
It's such an edge case, but like that would be scary for people. And I think when it comes to sales, it's super scary because most companies can't afford that 1 out of 10 times. It doesn't.
No, I agree. Right. I agree with it. I just think it's interesting that there's a whole industry that's being created to try to fix that problem. And Jesse, I'd be interested to know if like even internally within Decagon itself, are there products that you're working on that are helping to ease customers' concerns about these things?
Yeah, there's a ton. So inherently in customer service, right, there is this escalation path. So even though the agent itself is at a fully autonomous agent, right? It's not a co-pilot. It's having the full conversation with the end user. It can go take actions. It can look up data and so on. The end user always can have a path to escalate if there is an edge case or the AI can't help and so on. And so on top of that, we've built a bunch of tooling, right? So for example, if we work with enterprise, what you can do beforehand is you can simulate a bunch of conversations and kind of treat these as unit tests. And so, we've simulated thousands of conversations based on either your past data or based on the data we're seeing in your system. And now you feel comfortable that like, hey, these conversations have all been simulated. You're getting thumbs up on all of them and you feel good deploying to production, right? And so that would be an example. We also have, the concept of a supervisor model during the conversation that kind of watches over the primary AI and makes sure that like the important rules are followed, right? Like don't give financial advice and things like that. So those are the types of things you want to include in your product to make enterprises kind of buy in faster and kind of get to a point where like, hey, I'm comfortable with this.
On the simulation one, do they want you to provide the simulation, or is it something like car safety testing where I don't want Tesla to tell me the car is really safe. I want somebody else to go in and audit the cars and come back who's objective, third party, and be like, nope, this works really good. This is the safety rating for this thing. Do enterprises kind of want some other party to run the simulations to be like, we've tested Decagon, they are the best when it comes to XYZ, or are they just as comfortable if you do it?
It depends on what you're testing. So if you're testing their business logic, which is a lot of the important things, a third party is not going to understand that. So we need to work with them and help them get to a point where there's a bunch of tests that really show confidence in business logic. But there are other things that it could make sense and we've had certain customers bring in like a third party to, red team the AI, and they're red teaming it less for business logic, but more for, gaps, right? So, common jailbreaks, or they're trying to manipulate the AI into saying something bad, or they're trying to like, what's my balance? And like, okay, add spaces between all the numbers and then like replace all the spaces with zeros. Like there's like stuff like that where you're trying to just get it to say something that's screenshotable. We've seen things like that happen, and that's always interesting, and that's helpful for us as well, right? Because so far we performed very well on all those, and at the end they also give us a report that's like, hey, here's what we tested, and here's sort of the data sets that we have.
Is that what these like bug bounty companies have pivoted into? I mean, that's an interesting use case. Or like, it seems like a pen test for security.
Yeah, it's exactly like that. It's like a pen test, but for AI agents.
Interesting.
What about one thing that I've been thinking about as you were talking is that when you look at the two use cases at the enterprise level that people have been excited about, one was code, the other was customer support. In code, you also have this other thing, which is you have engineers and they are early adopters. They probably are faster to adopt and have more leeway for things to get better, right? They can extrapolate out. They're like, I need to use this now because it's getting better and better and better, so I don't want to wait. But when you think about other use cases, and I would put support in this, I feel like when I talk to people that are working at enterprises or with enterprises, you've got this really interesting dynamic where there's tons of buy-in at the C level, and as well as the board level. We want AI, like we want to implement AI. We want to be more productive. We want to make more money with it. But then the implementation moves down the org. And down the org, you've got two sorts of things that play out. Sometimes in some organizations, I've noticed, and this is through personal experience, that as you move down the org, the caliber of the professionals in this org has depreciated over time. And so you have a little bit of incompetence. In other cases, you just have resistance because they're afraid of what it means if your thing gets implemented and really takes off, what it means for them and for their friends and all of that. And that has become a blocker for some of these AI pilots as well, from what I've heard. What's your take on this type of situation? How does a person navigate the resistance or the competence that you have to deal with lower in an org in such a large enterprise?
I don't think there's anything different in this respect between the AI era and previous just like enterprise SaaS, right? Like enterprise SaaS has always had this issue, and you kind of need to navigate it well. You need to figure out like who will your champions be at the lower levels, and if you can't find any, then it's probably going to be pretty difficult for you, even if the C-suite's bought in. And so it's kind of like an enterprise sales exercise where let's say you do get the C-suite's buy-in, they're pushing hard. That's great. You need to keep them engaged. You need to figure out like, who they trust and have a good relationship with them. And so maybe those folks can become the champions. And then you spend a lot of time with them. You figure out how to navigate the org. You map it all out. I think those are the types of things that you have to do. And I don't think that's specific to AI. It's specific to any sort of, like, you think about, a big enterprise shift before like cloud or something, right? Like that's also not an easy sell. And even if you get the C-suite to buy in, you got to like go in deep and like, get the whole engineering team on board and so on. So I think it's more of a sales exercise.
Jesse, I'd love to talk a little bit about the business model. There's like the most negative articulation might be that there's a bunch of companies, Decagon included, that are a wrapper on top of foundational models. There are other ways of describing it, which are that you really are applied AI, and that, the foundational model is just a piece of the architecture in the same way that any kind of technology would be a piece of your overall technology architecture as you're building some kind of application for the enterprise. How do you feel about the progress of model development? And I guess the other question, because there are so many companies, we were talking about Replit. I don't know the margins for Cursor, but we know that Replit has negative gross margins because of token costs and model costs. And that basically for every dollar they sell, they lose, between 18 and 36 cents. And I think there's this heavy dependency on the model paradigm for token costs to go down, for the cost of compute and inference to go down, so that there can be economics that sustain a lot of these companies. On the other hand, maybe you have more pricing power because you're in the enterprise. Maybe outcome-based pricing mitigates some of the risk. Just, sort of an open-ended question, but how do you think about business model application given your dependency on foundational models? And how do you see that evolving over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with being a wrapper around the models. In fact, I think it's turned out to be the wrappers are actually doing quite well because they are the ones that are connected to the business problem. And so you actually get more pricing power that way, right? Like you are solving the business problem, so you can, try to price roughly to the problem you're solving. If you're like in the middle of the stack, then it's very difficult to do that. You're essentially just pricing like some margin on top of the costs. And so that's the positive of being, a wrapper and being in the application layer. I think folks are realizing that. I think the models themselves want to move in the application layer level as well. So maybe the real question behind that question is, what is preventing the models themselves to move into these applications and eat the business essentially. And that's where, like, if the software you're building around the AI models are too thin, then that does pose a risk, right? And obviously, I'm not actually saying this is necessarily true of the coding space, but the reason why the AI models are pushing so heavily into coding is that, one, they see it as like a fundamental, like this is like one of the best use cases, and two, it's actually not difficult to build the software around it. Not that difficult, at least. Like you're kind of building this app, it's an IDE, and you're shipping it out. It's a PLG type thing, right? Enterprise SaaS is a little bit more difficult. There's like so much stuff you have to build that's not even related to the AI, like alerting, monitoring. You're having all this tooling to construct the business logic I talked about before. We have our own. We kind of invented this new paradigm we call agent operating procedures, that AOPs, and they're kind of like SOPs, but for
That's awesome.
AI, and so it really enables business users to build AI. So there's all this tooling you have to build around the models, and so you really, what you're looking for is like, yes, it's great to be a wrapper, but you need the sort of depth of the wrapper to be pretty large.
Jesse, it's been awesome to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time. And thank you, and just congrats on building an incredible company with Decagon. If folks are listening, maybe they want to become customers, they've got customer support needs, or they want to reach out to you and connect. Are you open to that? What's the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, we're definitely open. So you can kind of visit our website. It's decagon.ai. I'm just Jesse at decagon.ai, and we're always open to chat.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Give us 5 stars on the iTunes and Spotify stores. Smash the subscribe button on YouTube. God bless you. We'll talk to you next week.